Welcome to Joe Houston, Head of Services at Newton Wood Barn, a nature-based alternative provision built on connection, community and creativity. Joe has over 20 years experience across mainstream, SEMH and SEND settings. She specialises in helping children thrive in environments that truly meet their needs. We're going to talk about alternative provision and how parents can access it, and also touch upon the EOTIS packages. Can you tell us about Newton Wood Barn and your offer?
Okay, so Newton Wood Barn is a relatively new alternative provision. It is based in East Hampshire on the Rutherfield estate. It's an alternative provision for up to 12 to 14 young people a day. And we've set it up being sort of addressed by or directed by our 3 C's, which is connection, community and creativity. And the idea is to create an environment for young people who perhaps are struggling in a specialist setting or a mainstream setting to have time away from those settings, to be able to have their needs met through the relational approach. That's meeting young people, being able to build secure relationships and accept them as who they are and what stage they're at. The curriculum is one that develops through doing. So it's a 3-phased curriculum: engage, explore and extend. And again, that gives us the flexibility to meet young people where they actually are in their learning journey, and take them from that point, which is often from the point of their interests, and then start to explore beyond their interests and then extend those skills into accredited learning, or extend those skills into the community or into their home even. So it's a lovely journey to go on with that young person and also their family. So that in a nutshell is what Newton Wood Barn is. It kind of focuses on those 3 C's and then uses the relational approach, green space, which is the use of nature, but it's also thinking about providing a low arousal environment for young people, an environment that doesn't feel institutional. When they come in, they feel safe, they feel secure. And it's also about providing nutritionally dense food and exploring where our food's coming from, being based within a farming area. We've got a little market garden that will go and look at what's growing and then bring that back and explore the different ways in which to cook that and how we produce food. So those are the elements that we're using at Newton Wood Barn to support young people and families to thrive.
And what current interests of the children there got?
Great question. So we have some young people who are coming in who are really interested in making things. So we look at woodwork. And we've linked up with a master craftsman within the estate who also has been able to take those young people who've shown an interest in that woodwork and help them explore and extend those skills even further. So they've been making window frames, they've been making a tree house, they're learning those old skills of the hand-based tools, which is, you know, for some heritage type cottage skills that we're losing. So for those young people, and that's running from primary right up to secondary, all working together to create beautiful work, beautiful products that they're making, has been a massive element for them to take what started as a small interest into actually this is a skill now, this is beyond an interest. And that's been really exciting to see. For some other young people, it's animals. So we've got a selection of small animals that we can use therapeutically as well. So some young people, they've come in, they've had a cycle of challenges within their current setting. That's led to sometimes emotionally based school avoidance. They haven't attended school for some of the young people up to 2 years. So creating relationships with other adults or even young people can be quite anxiety provoking. And so bringing the animals alongside allows you to go along parallel and take the sort of the pressure, the demand of that relationship away. And then from that, the young people can focus on the animal. Then you bring in the element of learning the welfare of that animal, about their habitat, about their eating. And then again, you're starting to explore beyond. Then you can bring into the DT. So they've been making hammocks for our rats because they chew them up, but they love the hammocks. So they've made this lovely selection of hammocks that go in the rats' cages. But to do that, they've had to design, learn how to sew, explore the different materials, look at what's in those materials. Is it going to be beneficial for the rats to be able to chew on them, or is it going to make them sick? So there's loads of elements from that initial interest of engaging where the young person is, and then you're exploring what could this look like, and then you're extending, because some of those young people now are going on to doing BTECs on animal care. So you can see the journey of just starting where that young person is, rather than them coming, going, you're key stage 3 or you're key stage 4, you're this year group, you should be doing this. And that's, I think, a really important element for some young people who have struggled with the education setting as it is contextualizing that learning, supporting them to see a purpose in it. And then by doing that, you're increasing their perception of themselves as a learner and allowing them to have that sense of achievement.
What is alternative provision, and what is it for?
Alternative provision has been around a very long time, and it varies hugely. There's not one provision that's the same. So you have some provisions that are based on farms, you have some providers that are based in garages I've worked with. You've got some provisions that are based in above quite industrial units on there. So it's quite far-reaching of what alternative provision is. The purpose of alternative provision, I suppose, is it's meant as a short-term, ideally, intervention to support young people and schools to meet that young person where they're at, look at potentially some of the challenges they're helping and help them re-engage. And then in an ideal world, be able to then transition back into a full-time school base that is able to meet their needs, whether that's returning to a mainstream or supporting with an educational healthcare plan assessment to that young person move on to a specialist setting. That's the ideal use. The majority of APs are what we call unregulated, although that's something I think that's starting to change. The unregulated means that they are not under Ofsted. Some will do voluntary and some will sign up, but there's a real mixture within that. You also have, most local authorities have a framework where all alternative provisions can go on to an individual local authority's framework. And all that means is they've looked at their paperwork and checked that they are meeting that local authority's standards, which are interpretation of what the DFE or Ofsted has said should be in place.
How would parents know? Where would they go to look to see if a place is regulated or unregulated?
You can ask on the regulated or unregulated. You would just do a Google search on that and find out which ones are and which are not. You have lots of really great APs that are unregulated. It just means that you need to do your own checks on them. I think it's something in the future is going to become clearer. At the moment, it's a little bit confusing, I would say, and it will become clearer. At the moment, Newton Wood Barn is unregulated. We're not Ofsted regulated currently, but that's something we're looking into. We are on the Hampshire framework, but we could only go on that framework 1 year after being open.
All right.
So it's different in every local authority. The best place, I think, is look at individual local authorities' local offers. You'll have a selection of alternative provisions on there. And then one of the best sources, I think, for information is through parents, SEND parents. There's lots of SEND forums around. And they're often a really great untapped resource. You know, parents reaching out to support other people with similar lived experiences or similar challenges, so creating those networks, and they'll have the direct experiences of those APs and be able to share that with you. But always visit these alternative provisions, always ask for their paperwork, and do that, what I call due diligence. Whether it's if your child is still on a roll at a school, that school will go alongside you and do it. If you're a parent home educating, then actually you need to know what are those checks, and each local authority will, again, on their website, probably have a list of checks and questions that they would be advising schools to ask, so you could use that framework on that. But it's very straightforward things that, you know, how are they managing safeguarding, how are they insured, their risk assessments in place, their health and safety. You just want to make the checks that they're doing with their staff. Are they meeting Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025 guidelines? Those elements that you know are happening within the school, because you've got a regulated body like Ofsted going in and checking them. So you're just doing those checks yourself, I would say.
Is there options for home educating parents to access alternative provision?
Yeah, the majority, talking from Newtonwood Barn, and say every alternative provision is so unique and different. But for ourselves, majority of our young people are coming in via school, whether that's a mainstream school or a specialist setting, or a young person with no school place, so under the local authority. That's the majority of our young people. There is nothing to say that home educating parents cannot access alternative provision. It's something at Newtonwood Barn we're going to look into, because currently our costing is linked to education healthcare plans, and that, I would imagine, would probably put it outcost a lot of parents who are home educating on that. And that's mainly due to the staffing ratios we've got in place, because of the young people that we're working with require high levels of adult support. But other alternative provisions might have, you know, bigger groups, lower levels of adult support, and be more accessible financially to many parents for home educating on that. And I know from talking to a few people, it's not an area I know a lot about, but some APs will do a sort of a tier system of financial support to be able to support parents who are home educating to access their provision.
In the UK, we have EOTIS packages, education otherwise than in school. What is this?
So EOTIS is, and I need to check which, it's linked to the Code of Practice. So it's for young people who've got education healthcare plans. However, the local authority has not been able to source a school that can meet that young person's needs. And that's quite an important bit. And I think it's either Section 60 or Section 61, which I will come back and check on and confirm on that. But that's the legal route that the local authority have to prove that they're unable to find an appropriate school setting to meet that young person's needs. And that usually goes through them sending out consultations, and consultations coming back not offering a place to that young person. And then that family going, right, there isn't a school available, we'd like an EOTIS. And that's where in simple, very clear terms, it's where the education healthcare plan still stays in place and falls under the local authority. So they'll call the annual reviews for that. And then the parent is able to put together a package, which is normally accessing a number of AP providers, and be able to put them in place to meet Section B, E, and F within the education healthcare plan. So Section B is your needs, Section E and F is your outcomes and the provision required to meet those outcomes. So that might look like having tutoring, And that tutoring could be in person in a small group, or that tutoring could be at home on a one-to-one, or that tutoring might be online. And that's linked to whatever's within that education healthcare plan. You would link that of which one of those areas is the most appropriate. It could also involve coming somewhere like Newton Wood Barn, and that would be looking at that young person being able to access social interaction with their peers. So that could be linked to their communication and interaction element of their EHCP, or it could be linked to their social, emotional, mental health aspect of it. You could also link it to cognition and learning, where it's learning through doing, if that's something that has been raised within the education healthcare plan. So it's really about understanding those needs and looking out and seeing what is out there. And I think that's where the world of AP has a lot of flexibility. So we've got some young people who have real interests in gaming. Minecraft particularly seems to be an area. So they're able to access, at the beginning of their journey, mentors online who have set up provisions to be able to work with a young person, again, through online, so that young person's at home feeling safe, there's their interest, and then from that it'll build their ability to interact and communicate outside of the home. And so then you're able to build on that. And there's a lot of providers, and my brain has gone completely blank to be able to name some. But you know, we've also got young people who are accessing coding. You've got a lot of great forest schools out there. You've got lots of sporting APs out there. You've got places that look at mechanics and building on elements on that. So there's a whole variety. So that's where an EOTIS, where you'd really look at, depending on the age and the ability of that young person, you'd be able to put things in and build their capacity over time. And that might be, you know, for the rest of their educational journey, or it might be to certain points where they're then able to re-enter and go, we feel they're ready for a setting now. And the HCP will be kept up to date alongside their journey. And then, yeah, they'll be able to step off and into a provision, which might be a college, it might be a school, it might be, who knows, you know, but it back into that system.
And so those packages are only linked to education healthcare plans.
They are, yeah.
And essentially then, so the parent, the funding is allocated to that package. And then, am I right in saying the parents sort of need to keep track of those, the finances?
Really good point, Imi. Yeah, so you would get what's called a personal budget often. And again, different local authorities work in different ways. You can get direct payments, or the payment might go directly to the AP, depending on each local authority and how they set that up. So the parent would put together, and you'll get a form, again, changes with each local authority, but in Hampshire they'll set out what's the provider, what part of the EHCP is it linking to, and what's the cost implications. And again, as it would from a school, it would go to a panel, and at what elements would be agreed. So it's not a funding stream that's just everlasting and never ends. But as long as you link it into the area of need and it goes to the panel, it's agreed, you would then either get direct payments or you'd get those elements. And again, you would be asking those providers to write reports to show the impact. So when it goes back to the annual review, so at Luton Wood Barn, I'd write reports showing the impact, the progress made, and look at next steps. So you would run it in a very similar way to win a school, and instead of reaching out to all the individual teachers, you know, the parent would be reaching out to all the individual providers. But it puts more onus on the parent keeping an overview of that and working closely with the case officer within the local authority.
And what is it about your environment that helps children thrive?
I don't think it's one thing. I think it's several things, and it starts with the connection. And it starts at the first moment a school or a parent reaches out to find out more about Newton Wood Barn, and it's about meeting those individual families where they are and hearing their stories, I think, and really working in partnership. I think we have a lot to learn from our parents, and I think sometimes we forget that, that parent is with that young person 24/7 on that journey. And so it's really important we connect, we hear, and we listen, and we run an admission process that is honest and transparent, so that we know that whatever we're going to offer is appropriate, and that young person is got a high chance of being successful within that. Doesn't mean that there's not challenge within that and you have to tweak and turn, because that's important. But we don't want to be offering places that are likely not to work, because then you're becoming part of the problem rather than part of the solution. So I think starting with that connection, starting the connection with the young person, hearing the young person, hearing their voice. On simple terms, one of the things we've put in place at Newton Wood Barn, and this was hearing our parents and hearing our young people, was what we call our gather room. Our gather room is a place that we put aside. It's a room, it's got fridge, tea, coffee, tables, comfy chairs, and that's our parents are able to wait there for the young people. And the young people know that if they need to go and see their parent or caregiver, they can go up, check in, and then come away again. And that supports, and we don't put a time on that. We leave that to the parent and the young person decide as and when they want to send their parents away and go, I don't need you to stay anymore. And we find by taking that pressure away of putting in, so we'll go with this for a week, we'll go with this for 2 weeks, and then we'll just try and reduce the time. Just leave them to trust that they will be able to do that themselves has been really powerful. It's also had a lovely side to it on our community, which is our second C, where the parents feel that the support of that room from other parents. That's been incredible to watch, and just them feeling validated, them feeling heard and attuned to by other parents who've had very similar journeys, because it can be quite a lonely place if you have a child who is not in the system, or the system hasn't quite worked for them. And as a parent and as a family, you carry that in lots of different ways. And it's, you're often not picking up or dropping off at the times of the other parents on there. So you become isolated. So to meet another group of parents who've had that similar journey is quite powerful. And they've set up their own lovely WhatsApp group. And they're all going through similar, challenges. And so they can reach to each other for support. So that's a lovely bit within the community. The element of meeting young people where they are, and us being creative in how we do that. There's not one path. There's not one size that fits all. So we're constantly asking what else can we do to support this young person be successful? What would that look like? How do we manage that? And that's our 3 C's. And through that, wrapping around, as I've said, the space, thinking about the space. Is that young person going to be more successful in a group of young people straight away, or actually giving them the opportunity to work parallel to other young people, inside, outside? Is that in the woods? Is that in the animal care room? So you're really thinking about your space, thinking about the resources you're using, and understanding the relational approach is really understanding the needs that are driving that young person's behaviors, so that you can learn how to respond to them rather than reacting. And the responding is you're going down and meeting that young person's needs. The reacting is you're seeing the behavior and just reacting to it. So that's something that we work closely with as well. So I think all of those elements help us be successful with our young people and create a safe environment for them to be.
What advice would you give to parents who, in particular are advocating for their child in the SEND process?
No, believe in yourself. I think that's what I often tell parents, is listen to their own gut. We tend to override what we know in our gut with our brain. We tend to be swayed by the external pressures. And I'd say the majority of parents know their child. They know what that young person needs. And then it's, you know, working within the system that you have a lot of great people working within. However, there's lots of challenges. So, you know, it's being patient, it's reaching out for those people that can support and help. If you're SEND is a great parental support portal, you know, who are employed, have a great understanding of the code of practice, reaching out to them. Parents reaching out to other parents on SEND forums, because, as I say, they're just ultimate force. The parents we work alongside are just incredible, and they know the system so well because they've had to learn that system to be able to get their young children, young people, what they feel they deserve and need, quite rightly. So reach out to SEND forums on there. If you're still within a school, try to work within the SENCO, try to work, you know, with the SENCO, work with your school as best you can on that, and everyone trying to be patient with each other, but at the same time knowing what your child deserves and sticking to that.